too slow, going too slow. Alright, not perfect, but I'll take it.
Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Yes, as that little video clip shows, I actually soloed yesterday, August 9th of 2025, which means I actually took off and landed on my own with no one else in the plane. So that's a little bit adrenaline pumping. It wasn't super scary by the time I got to it, but still it was very adrenaline pumping because there's no backup. It was just me in the airplane. So I checked back and my last milestone I did was on May 28th after about 7 hours of flying. At the time I had 6 tips or lessons that I had learned. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can check it out up here, and I will leave a link at the end of this video as well. And as I said in the video, it was sort of a planting a flag, like a milestone of where I am, what I'm thinking about at that point. And I said I would be back after I had soloed. I figured that would be 15 or 20 hours, so around double of the hours I'd had. As it turns out, it took about 5x the number of hours. So it was a lot longer than I thought. And actually, of the 6 thoughts I have this time around, that's the number 1 thought. It took a lot longer than I expected. I really did expect that I would be able to get up in the air and fly on my own and do the landings and all of that kind of stuff after, 15 to 20 hours in that range. 37 hours was significantly longer than I thought, and quite frankly, that's okay. This is one of those sorts of situations where you don't want to put pressure on yourself and certainly not on your instructor to be like, hey, I want to go and solo right now. Having an arbitrary number for an individual is arbitrary. Every single person is different. We all have skills that we're good at. We all have skills that we're not so good at. A related anecdote to this was I grew up playing tennis. My family played tennis. My brother and sister were both college players. My niece, my brother's daughter, was a professional tennis player. So we grew up playing tennis, and I was just no good at it. I could not get the skills. It took me forever to do it. And the joke was that I would make an exceptionally good tennis coach someday because I was so bad at it and it took me so much effort to learn how to do it that I would really intellectually understand how to teach other people how to play tennis. And as it turns out, that sort of lack of coordination of being able to do all those things at once and that sort of sense of where I am in space, particularly on landings, everything else I felt comfortable with after about maybe 15 hours of flying or so. But those landings, man, they took a long time to get down. And as you can see in the overlaid videos, I'm still not doing it fantastically. So for me, just like with tennis, it took a lot of intellectual processing, a lot of thinking about how it should work before it actually began to internalize for me. And that just equates to hours. And I honestly really got down on myself a lot of times. I thought, man, what am I doing? I really suck at this. I shouldn't be here because this is taking too long. It's costing too much money, which is a significant factor. I've already spent about $10,000 on this quest, which is about the play money I had, and I don't quite know where the rest of the money is coming from because I burned through it all relatively quickly. So between just the knowledge that, quote, other people do it in like 15 or 20 hours and the fact that it was costing a lot of money, it was a lot of pressure on me, and I really did get down on myself a lot of times. So it was a pretty big success. I did not know for positively sure that I would get to this stage. I had times where I thought I might just quit. I might just be like, well, you know what, that's good enough. I've flown around. I've had the experience. So for me, as with many other people that I've talked to, it was a very big deal getting to this moment. So my tip to folks that are just starting out or thinking about doing this is it's going to take time. It's probably going to take more time and effort than you think, but that's okay. We're all different. Some people are just going to naturally be able to do it much easier. I'm sure if my brother or sister learned to fly, they would learn the landings much quicker than I did, just because for whatever reason they have that sort of natural ability that I don't. But again, that's okay because we all learn at our own paces, and you just have to be patient with yourself. My number 2 thought is that ground school kind of sucks, but it is super important. So ground school is a set of lessons. You can learn it by video, by text, whatever. I did Sporty's pilot training. It was very good, reasonable price. There are many other options out there, of course, so pick whatever you like. But I spent about 6 weeks of pretty intense studying, including one very intense week before I took the test to get ready for the test. And the test was serious. Even though I was just going for my private pilot's license, this was the same room, the same setup as somebody who was going for their commercial pilot's license, who was basically wanting to fly 300 passengers or something in a 737. So they really don't joke around, nor should they. Obviously, they want to take all of this seriously. Even a private pilot's license, I'm up in the air flying around, and they want to make sure I know what the heck I'm talking about. What suggestions do I have about doing ground school well? I would suggest whatever study method works for you, whether that's taking notes or repeatedly going through questions and things, just do that. As it turns out, Sporty's has these tests that they can generate based on things you got wrong or based on areas that you want to cover and stuff. And I just took the sample tests over and over and over again, and then I copied down the questions I got wrong and then studied those questions. So I was really, really focused. Now, the FAA won't allow you to export or talk about the exact questions that are on the test, but I would suggest that you should look very, very carefully at Sporty's and other tests because they happen to be extremely close to the FAA questions. So definitely take ground school seriously. I ended up getting a 92, which was 60 questions out of 65 correct. I think that the test used to be 60 questions, but they bumped it to 65, at least for me. So that's how many questions I had to deal with. So definitely take it seriously because the knowledge in there is knowledge that you need to be a pilot. It's not just arbitrary stuff, although some of the questions do feel a little bit arbitrary. As for when to do the ground school, you could honestly start today, even if you didn't plan to start flying for 6 more months or something. But for me, it felt really good to kind of sync the two of them up so that I was learning things in the air so that I understood why it was important to learn that in the ground school. So I sort of started both of them at the same time and then completed the test on July 7th or about a month ago. The next thought/tip is that takeoffs are hard and landings are significantly harder. Takeoffs are difficult because you've got to keep the airplane, going straight down the runway. If you have a crosswind, things like that, it can be a little bit challenging to take off. I'll overlay some video of me taking off. By the way, I don't have a ton of video because David, my CFI, requested that while I was doing the training, I not be fiddling with my Meta Ray-Ban glasses. He didn't want me recording things, so I respected that. And so a lot of the video is pretty old. Some of the video is from when I did formation flying with Robin, which was awesome. And then, of course, when I did my solo flight and he wasn't in the plane with me, I could record whatever I wanted to. So I did that for the solo flying. But anyway, on a takeoff, you configure everything. Everything is exactly the same every time, and you take off from a standstill. So, aside from wind variables and different runways and stuff like that, the takeoff is more or less the same every time. What became very clear to me, however, is that no two landings are ever the same. You're starting off in the air. There are different weather conditions, different runways, different traffic patterns, different traffic in the air, other airplanes, things like that. You're coming in too high, too low, etc., etc. So every single landing is different, and it requires a lot of different things happening at once, which, as I noted with my tennis lack of skills, is a significant problem that I have. Dealing with all of those different things at once, especially in the last 50 or 100 feet above the runway, proved to be extremely difficult for me. So that was obviously the biggest challenge that I had, and I was very, very proud to finally overcome that. You'll see my landings are not superb by any means, but I'm getting on the ground and I'm doing it relatively safely, and of course I will get better and better over time as I get more and more chance to practice. Looking back at my first video, I talked about fear of flying, how it caused me a lot of consternation. I still have that feeling, but it's really only in the last couple hundred feet of the landing, because it still to me looks like, I'm going to come into the ground and just crash into it and stuff. Now, that's getting better and better and better, and obviously before David let me solo, he was like, I want to be sure that you're not just freaking out anymore and stuff like that. So that's being overcome as we speak, but it is still something you have to contend with. I mean, you're basically falling out of the sky. So you really have to confront that fear. It's something that's a real factor, and I'm sure even pilots that have been doing this for years, like Navy pilots and stuff, you come into an aircraft carrier at night with the lights out or something like that, I'm sure that they are not, just sitting there with their heartbeat at 60 beats per minute or something. I'm sure there's some adrenaline involved. As for what to do, sim flying has been really good with X-Plane and the setup that I had. If you want to look at the setup I had, I'll leave a link to that in the description so you can check it out. But that's only effective up to a point because you don't get the kind of surround sound thing. Now, yeah, if I had a $10,000 simulator with wraparound vision, of course, that would help a lot. But just looking at it on a small computer screen, you don't get the same effect. And of course, you know that you're in a simulator. You don't think you're in reality, so you don't have that fear factor and adrenaline involved with that as well. So anyway, training my senses to understand where the runway is, how far under my feet it is, basically, has been a significant challenge. That's been the thing. And then on top of that is coordinating things like pulling back the yoke at the right time to get the flare, not to flare too early, not to flare too late, not to plop in the landing, not to land with all three wheels at the same time and things. There's just a lot of stuff to learn. So it's been a significant challenge, and I was very, very proud to, feel like I actually could land finally. My fourth thought is is that beating up the traffic pattern is really boring but super important. Now, in my 37 hours, we've done a bunch of cross-country flying, we've done a bunch of stall practice, we've done a bunch of maneuvering practice, turns around a point, flying from place to place based on VORs as well as GPS and other data. So I've done a lot of stuff. I haven't just been sitting around the pattern, but for the last, I think, 5 flights before my solo, all we did was go up and around the pattern over and over and over again. As it turns out, there are 2 runways. There's 9-27 and 2-20, and because of the different conditions and all of that kind of stuff, I ended up flying on all 4 of those runways, which meant that it was a lot of different practice, which was great. But for the last 5 flights, which equates to about 6 or 7 hours, we basically just went up. I felt bad for David. I was like, my gosh, this must be boring for him to just go up and fly rectangles around an airport over and over again. But you know, he's a certified flight instructor, and he has got somewhere around 1,000 students that have soloed. He is a legend in the Athens area, so I'm sure he's seen it before. So anyway, don't underestimate the importance of just going around and around the pattern, and I think some of my first solo flights, I'll go out and practice stalls and things like that, but I'm going to spend a lot of time doing stop and goes on the runway just to get more and more practice with takeoffs and landings. And speaking of beating up the pattern, it's been really, really good practice for air traffic control, or ATC communications. I've gotten so much more comfortable with that. I said in my first video that that was like a foreign language and it was very difficult, and I feel like that's kind of been an unlock. I feel very comfortable with that now. Not quite as comfortable with CTAF for uncontrolled towers because I just haven't done it as much, but generally speaking, the flow of ATC communication, including even when you make bobbles and things like that, that you're able to correct that, and there are people, they're human beings on the other end of it. So it's not like if you make a mistake, you're going to get in really big trouble. You just tell them, you're like, whoops, I didn't hear that, or sorry, I miscommunicated that, I said that wrong or something, right? You just say it briefly so you're not taking up a lot of time, and they of course will understand. My next thought or point is that there is still so much to go. There is, of course, night flying, so night takeoffs, night landings, night navigation from place to place. There is, of course, cross-country flying. Like I said, we have started working on that, but eventually I'm going to have to do a solo 3-point cross-country tour. So I'll have to go to some place that's 50 or 60 miles away, go to another place that's 50 or 60 miles away, and then return back to the Athens airport. So that's a big deal that will be coming up, going to different airports, landing, taking off, dealing with all of the different air traffic control frequencies, all of that kind of stuff is also going to be a big deal. Then there will be short field and soft field landing and takeoff practice, which basically means that you simulate either soft fields like grass and or short fields where you have a very limited amount of time to make a landing and roll to a stop, because those are part of the eventual check ride. Speaking of which, of course, this whole thing culminates with a check ride with an interview with a designated pilot examiner, or DPE, and then a check ride with them, which, you know, all of that together can take 3 or 4 hours easily. And you have to practice all of your skills. You have to take off, land, go from place to place, show them how you can do stalls, how you can do short field and soft field landings, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the culmination, and that's when you get your official pilot's license. When you do get your official pilot's license, the big differences are, number one, that you can carry passengers. So right now I can fly myself, but I can only fly myself. And number two, you can fly at night as opposed to only during the day. Now this is only visual flight reference, which means there are certain sky conditions. In general, that's 3 Cessna 152s, which means 3-mile visibility side to side, 1,000 feet above the clouds, 500 feet below, or 2,000 feet side to side. See how the ground school actually comes in to be beneficial? But anyway, right now, and even when I get my official pilot's license, it will be only visual flight rules. If I want to do instrument flight rules, then I will obviously have to train for that in addition, which I probably expect to, given primarily that I have the funds to be able to keep going with all of this stuff. And then thought number 6, my last thought, is the flying community is just golden. It's just wonderful. I have met so many people, including folks that I knew before, like Joe Tegmeyer and Chuck Cook, of course, but lots and lots of new people that, as I've talked about this on X or just around in the community, people have come out of the woodwork saying like, oh man, I'm a pilot too, or I used to be a pilot, or I have an airplane, would you like to come fly with me? Like Robin, that was a fantastic experience, getting to fly Formation and then getting to fly the Vans RV-8 myself. It was just amazing stuff. So a real unexpected win to all of this is just the fact that there's an amazing community of people who are passionate about flying. So if you have a passion for flying, all you have to do is just sort of start the ball rolling, and other people will come and join you. They will find you, you will find them, and it will be a wonderful community. And I have to say, I understand why, after just doing it for, just 37 hours. That's not that much time, but it's just incredible to be up in the sky, to be like a bird, to actually literally fly over birds sometimes. You'll see like a hawk or something out just flying around on a thermal or something, and you fly past them and you're like, wow, that is an amazing experience. So the experience of flying is amazing, but the experience of being in this community of people who are like-minded, who are passionate about this, that was unexpected for me. I don't know why, but I have found it to be really, really inspiring. And I really love to hear people's stories. In fact, if you have some, leave them in the comments about how you learned to fly or something like that. I would love to hear about that. Alrighty, folks, as promised, this is my post-soloing milestone video that I'm putting out. Like I said, it took a little longer than I expected, but that's okay. I'll do another video perhaps after cross-country or night flying or something like that, where I can give you the experience of all of that as well. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, please do like it and consider subscribing for more of this kind of content, including a really big video about the history of AI that I've spent a lot of time working on. So if you want to catch that, be sure to hit the subscribe button and also the bell notification icon so you get all of the notifications, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.